Okay. You ready? Okay. So good morning, everyone. My name is Alani Kyoki. I'm the executive director of the board. Thank you so much for participating in the Hoya Retirement Savings September 30th board meeting. Before the meeting is called to order, the chairperson will explain the procedures to participate in this hybrid board meeting, including how members of the public can participate and interact with the board during the meeting.
Internet access. To view the meeting and provide live oral testimony, please use the link at the top of the agenda. You will be asked to enter your name. The board requests that you enter your full name, but you may use a pseudonym or other identifier if you wish to remain anonymous. You will also be asked for an email address. You may fill in this field with any entry in an email format, for example, etc., mail.com. Your microphone will be automatically muted and video will be turned off. When the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may click the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen to indicate that you wish to testify about an agenda item. You will individually be enabled to unmute your microphone, turn on your video if you choose to, and testify. When recognized by the chairperson, please unmute your microphone and turn on your video if you choose to before speaking, and mute your microphone and turn off your video after you finish speaking. Phone access. If you cannot get internet access, you may get audio only access by calling the Zoom phone number listed at the top of the agenda. Upon dialing the number, you will be prompted to enter the meeting ID, which is also listed at the top of the agenda. After entering the meeting ID, you will be asked to wait to be admitted into the meeting. When the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may indicate you want to testify by entering star and then 9 on your phone's keypad. After entering star and then 9 on a voice prompt, will let you know that the host of the meeting has been notified. When recognized by the chairperson, you may unmute yourself by pressing star and then 6 on your phone. A voice prompt will let you know that you are unmuted. Once you are finished speaking, please enter star and then 6 again to mute yourself. For both internet and phone access, when testifying, you'll be asked to identify yourself and the organization, if any, that you represent. Each testifier will be limited to 5 minutes of testimony per agenda item. Pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92-3.7E, the board may remove or block any person who willfully disrupts or compromises the conduct of the meeting. At its October 21st, 2025 meeting, the board will consider whether it will adopt this limitation on time for public testimony. For today's meeting, the 5 minutes time limit for testimony will not be applied. If connection to the meeting is lost for more than 30 minutes, the meeting will be continued on a specified date and time. This information will be provided on the board's website at labor.hawaii.gov. Instructions to attend State of Hawaii virtual board meetings may be found online at labor.hawaii.gov. At this time, I'll conduct a roll call of the members, and for those members attending virtually, please indicate whether you are present and alone. Derek Shigano, BNF delegate for Director Salaveria.
Present and alone.
Thank you. I, William G. Kunzman, designate for Director Utai, am here. Jesse Keola Dean.
Present and alone.
Thank you. Barbara Creed.
Present.
Andrew Nomura.
Here.
Ryan Taniguchi.
Present and alone.
Thank you. Senator Aquino. Excused. Representative Sayama.
Here and alone.
Thank you. Okay, I will now call the meeting to order at 10:07 a.m. Our first agenda item is approval of the minutes, the August 19th, 2025 open session meeting minutes. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to provide testimony at this time?
There are none.
Are there any amendments suggested by the board member?
One,
Go
Hello?
ahead. Keola?
on page 2, on the list of Zoom guests, I don't believe there was a guest with the name 1.95E+10.
So member Kane, when we pulled the participant list, they were listed as a guest in the Zoom meeting. I'm not sure if that was also observer.
Okay, it looks like a typo, but okay.
Okay, so no amendment then. Okay,
So move to accept the minutes as drafted.
is there a second?
Second.
Do I have unanimous consent?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item, new business. Presentation by Georgetown University Center for Retirement Initiatives. Angela M. Antonelli, Research Professor, Executive Director, Center for Retirement Initiatives, McCourt School of Public Policy, Georgetown University, will present the Hawaii Retirement Savings Board with information, including but not limited to state facilitated retirement savings programs, an overview of the status of the programs, lessons learned, and best practices. And at this time, do I have any members from the public who would like to provide testimony?
None.
Seeing none, are there any comments from the board at this time? I do not see any, so we will turn it over to Angela Antonelli.
Very good. Thank you. Alani, is the deck going to will be displayed?
I can, are you able to share it or no?
Do you want me to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so give me sharing. Let me send the request.
Yes.
Okay, very good. And then just the chat. Okay. Thank you, Alani, and thank you to the board for this opportunity to spend some time with you today, reviewing the status of state programs around the nation and share some lessons learned and best practices. I have to say, I'm very excited to see where Hawaii is today. And so congratulations to you. We look forward to continuing to work with you closely as you begin to implement this program. And we will certainly be a partner with you to do everything we can to ensure success for Hawaii. So in terms of the Georgetown Center, just real quick background. I started the center 12 years ago, hard to believe. We didn't have any state programs, and the primary mission in establishing the center was in fact to help advocate and support state facilitated retirement savings programs. So please consider us that resource for you. We have built it as a clearinghouse, a hub. You can check cri.georgetown.edu. Much of the information you'll see in this presentation and a lot of other information is available on the website. And there's also for states the ability to log in and review archives and detailed information. So again, we're happy to maintain this for states. We're also really honored now that states are becoming members of the center and helping to support the work that we do and allow us to continue to expand that to ensure the success of state programs going forward. We'll be hosting our next annual meeting. So for a decade now, every month, I've convened the states for monthly meetings, and for 7 years now, hosted an annual meeting of the states. So we'll be doing that again in January of 2026 at the University of Miami in Coral Gables, Florida. In January of this year, we were in Nashville. I know it's a long trip for Hawaii, and that is a disappointment because it is such a long trip often, even if it's to the West Coast. But we always hope that there's the possibility that Hawaii will be able to join us at these annual meetings. So again, I am sure you've been over these data many, many times in the context of reports that have been done. to support the creation of the Hawaii program. But you know you have an aging population. It relies heavily on Social Security and the cost of existing federal and state level programs to support and provide that safety net for our aging population is already very costly and significant. The access gap exists nationally and it exists in Hawaii as it does in every state. Granted, Hawaii is a smaller state, so the number of workers that we're looking at, almost 500,000 of full and part-time workers over the age of 18. These are Georgetown estimates of the access gap, but I think more importantly, what we've added to our analysis when we refresh these numbers is a reminder about the independent gig workforce and how that's grown. So if you look at those who lack access in Hawaii, but then you also look at that number at the bottom middle in terms of gig economy workers in Hawaii, it's actually quite significant in Hawaii. That's probably not surprising proportionally, given the nature of the Hawaii economy. But as you can see, when we're looking at 94,000 versus 167 private sector employed, that's a significant number of workers. And so when we look at the total workers in Hawaii who lack access, it does bump that up, not quite double it, but it's a significant increase. Happy to discuss that more, and I'm sure Hunter is as well. And again, I'm really honored to be able to join this discussion with Hunter Raley, who's the Executive Director of Colorado Secure Savings Program, and what they're doing. Amazing work in Colorado. And again, the benefits of being able to tackle this and give workers the opportunity to save for retirement is not insignificant. I'm often asked the question, does $100 a month make a difference? It absolutely does. That is on average a little bit more than that, the contribution that we see in new programs. But even if a worker kept the same job, didn't change it for 40 years, kept putting $100 away, and that would grow over time, you'd see that worker contribution grow to more than 100,000. And then we have the Savers Match that's coming down the pike in 2027. Hawaii state programs are a great conduit because of the eligible population for the Savers Match to be a vehicle for highlighting and helping more workers take advantage of that Savers Match and boost their retirement savings. So that addition is not insignificant. And again, it will help grow those assets over time. The cost of doing nothing, you've worked with the Pew Charitable Trust. They've done great work in analysis in supporting states as well, and a great partner. So their cost of doing nothing estimates, which you've seen, the federal budget costs for Hawaii, $3.8 billion, the state budget costs over $1.2 billion. So again, we know, given the aging of the population, the lack of sufficient retirement savings, and the challenges in the growth of these programs, that there is a significant cost if we don't do something. In terms of the status of these state programs today, we have 20 states that have adopted programs. As you can see on the left side, many of them fall into the auto IRA model, which is like Hawaii. And the legislative amendments that you recently enacted made you more consistent with the vast majority of these auto IRA states. So these were important legislative amendments. So we're excited to see Hawaii again, now plan and hopefully be able to launch in 2026. This year, we'll see Rhode Island launch, and Rhode Island and Connecticut just announced. So the second partnership, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Minnesota is part of the Colorado partnership, and Hunter is again with us today. New York is also preparing to launch. So this year, Rhode Island and New York will be launching. In 2026, Minnesota will be launching. We hope Hawaii will join and also launch in 2026. And then Washington State, which started one of the earliest programs as a voluntary marketplace, which has not been particularly successful, recently adopted an auto IRA program. So they're scheduled to launch that auto IRA component in 2027. As you can see, there are a few other states in other buckets. Massachusetts has a multiple employer plan, voluntary 401k arrangement for small nonprofits. Missouri recently adopted a similar model, and I've been working with them as they think about their path to launching that voluntary multiple employer plan arrangement. And then New Mexico is, for a variety of different reasons, has a voluntary system, but that is currently on hold for the time being. Less about the model and less, I think, more about resources and other factors within the state of New Mexico. And this is just a map. You can always find it updated on our homepage and on other pages of our site that tracks the red shaded states or the states that have programs. During the legislative sessions, we track states that have introduced bills. As you can see, there's only one blue state. That is the only state since 2012, to our knowledge, that has done nothing with respect to any proposals in the legislature regarding state facilitated retirement programs. No studies, no program bills. So that means essentially 49 states in the District of Columbia over a little more than a decade have taken steps and have introduced bills at different times. So we remain optimistic. Georgetown works closely with a variety of stakeholders as we plan and look to 2026, and always continuing to support the states and hopefully add new program states. In terms of state program performance, we maintain publicly available data. You can find that on our site. There's a state tab with many sub-tabs that you can drop down. One of those is a data tab, but we're excited to see where we are with respect to the growth in assets. These are the auto IRA states, or as of the end of August, and we're coming up today, September 30th. So we'll have the September 30th data soon. But you can see more than almost 2.4 billion in assets, more than 250,000 registered employers, and almost 1.1 million in funded accounts. And when you see the acceleration in the growth of assets, that's, again, exponentially, it just gets faster and faster. And so what you're looking at here is a chart that has the June 30th data in it. We'll be adding September 30th. We should be marking 2.5 billion. So when we look at where we were in May of 2025 at 2 billion, and I was actually surprised and pleased because it's a rapid progression to add that next $500 million. So in May of 2025, we crossed 2 billion. In September 30th, we expect to cross 2.5 billion. And again, keep in mind, we're going to be adding New York State and other states this year and next year. So I think we'll only continue to see that grow. But, there are other factors that affect that acceleration. California and Illinois began enforcement actions around the time that you really see this spike up in 2022 and that acceleration. And then again, at the same time, right around 2022, it was California, Illinois, and Oregon for many years. And then since 2022, we've added all of these other states that have now opened since that time. So that has also contributed to that rapid growth. And again, this is just another data chart that you have to refer to that shows how we've grown. And again, California, Illinois, and Oregon, along with Colorado, make up a significant portion of those assets. And then we have the other states that are part of the Colorado partnership and other states as well, like New Jersey. Enforcement and compliance really does matter. We began sort of charting out and looking at timelines with the growth in California, Illinois, and Oregon. And as you can see, there's a few moving parts. So there's design as well. There's design components as well as enforcement and compliance. But when you look at California and when they started to send out penalty notices, and also a little bit of an uptick with Illinois as well as with Oregon. Oregon hasn't started its enforcement actions. It's beginning to do that now. So we expect that we'll see an effect later on in the Oregon data. But also both with California and Illinois, sort of another factor into all of this is the bringing in of additional employers, because Illinois lowered its threshold from 25 to 5 employers. And then California also went from 5 to covering everyone. So that is somewhat of a factor, but you also can see at the time of the enforcement actions, a significant impact as well. So one of the things to keep in mind, and this was something why the legislative amendments in Hawaii were so important for consideration, is that we are seeing standardization in program design, the Roth IRAs, the lower employer thresholds, the opt-in of gig workers, a standard default contribution level, auto escalation features, short asset holding periods, and simple investment menus. I will say states have been doing this, and it's helped to drive the entire retirement national ecosystem, because we've seen since the launch of state programs, you often hear about the Secure Act reforms that have contributed to shaping private employer-sponsored retirement plans. And many of what we've seen in Secure and Secure 2.0, because the states have shown that small businesses, when given access to a simple, low-cost way to save, will take advantage of it, that workers when auto-enrolled, many of them will stay enrolled and will save even at a modest level. But the bottom line is when employers and employees are given a way to save, many of them will take advantage of that. That drove changes at the federal level to provide incentives to reduce startup costs for the creation of new employer-sponsored plans, the requirement of auto-enrollment to be used for any new employer-sponsored plans that are established. Many of the things that we're talking about with state programs are not dissimilar from the discussions we have about private employer-sponsored plans. But I will say state leadership has helped not only at the state level and these state programs, but these programs have really helped to drive what I think have been very positive, beneficial changes nationally in our retirement system, which is an employer-based private system for the most part. So auto IRA programs are increasingly also standardized in how they're administered with their governance structures, the importance of marketing and outreach, data sharing, the hybrid fee structure, the program rollout, and enforcement and compliance. And we'll get into all of this a little bit more. So in terms of best practices and lessons learned, the Roth IRA is the default, with the traditional IRA also offered as a choice is pretty standard now. The use of auto enrollment, those default contribution levels typically at 5%. And as I said, auto escalation. The rollout of the programs, often with a small pilot with a diverse set of employers and industries reflected, and then moving to full open to all eligibles. The bottom line, when we look at some of the lessons we've learned over the years, savers tend to stick with their defaults, and the majority don't act to change their contribution levels. Securing state employer data is incredibly important, especially when you're thinking about compliance and enforcement, but also just measuring performance. Opening your programs to all the eligibles, but managing it in waves based on employer size is also become more of a standard practice. When you open the program, if employers want to join, there's no reason necessarily to make them wait. So the waves are sort of for administering the program, and certainly if there is enforcement and compliance provisions and sort of staggering that. But when you do open the program, anybody who wants to join can start from day one, and you don't need to have long onboarding timelines. So, and I think there's also an understanding and, to be patient and understand that moving employers through the process from registration to actual payroll contributing accounts can take time. And I can touch on some of the reasons why that's the case as well. This chart, which is on our site and we routinely update it, but as you can see, in terms of lessons learned, a lot of waves with California, Illinois, and Oregon as the early adopter states. But then again, as time went on, we began to learn that you open the program, you open it up to everybody, you start it with a pilot, but then you can open it to all eligible employers. And if you want to manage it administratively to waves for compliance purposes, you can do that. Hunter will talk a bit about the Colorado program and that experience, the timelines, and also what that has meant for partner states and in timeline to launch. In terms of marketing and outreach, it's an incredibly important priority and line item in a state and its budgets and resources for program success. Hiring staff to help you with marketing and outreach, building bridges to local community organizations, multilingual content dissemination, community events, webinars, testimonials, social media, and also really important for program leaders in the state and staff to dedicate time to outreach and events, to getting out into the community, to move throughout the state and interact and with communities and organizations at the local level. And if you're not investing in marketing and outreach, it's going to affect program performance. It's important to focus on employers and value, and there is value in targeted marketing to them. Their employees were going to go to them about their program. So what employers think really matters a lot. And again, don't underestimate the level of effort to cover the state and notably reach rural areas. I mean, even in the early adopter states, there are still going to be some folks that have not heard about Oregon Saves or Cal Savers or Illinois Secure Choice. That's not a failure. It's just a recognition of the complexities and the importance of marketing and outreach. In terms of investment policy statements, to the extent that that you serve on other similar boards in the state, developing that investment policy statement, evaluating the investment options. Typically, it's a suite of target date funds, an equity fund, a bond fund, maybe capital preservation money market fund. Default investment is usually the target date fund, Funds are going to flow into the money market or capital preservation fund, usually the setup for 30, 60, 90 days, giving folks a little bit of time for that opt-out period, and then it's deposited into the age-appropriate target date fund unless the saver has chosen alternative investment. So again, the investment options, keeping them few and simple. The reality is most of the funds are going to flow in and remain in the target date funds. Just as we know, workers don't often change from the default contribution levels. They're not going in and affirmatively often making changes, and they'll stick with defaults. The interstate partnership arrangements, again, Hunter will tell you more about the Colorado Partnership for Dignified Retirement. You can see the states at the time of the announcements that they would negotiate those partnerships. Maine, Delaware, Vermont, Nevada have all launched. Minnesota will launch in early 2026. Connecticut's partnership was literally just announced formally as completed a couple of weeks ago. And so Rhode Island is now actively working with Connecticut to set the time for the launch of that program, which could be as early as this next month, but that's October, starting tomorrow. You know, when considering a partnership, some things to take in mind, right? Your options are you could join an existing partnership. You could choose to create a new one. And obviously you could choose to have a standalone program, just launch the Hawaii program. So some things to think about, pros versus standalone programs. And again, Hunter can add more color to all of this, but you know, to the extent it's the partnership can support greater efficiencies of scale to help keep those program costs and fees for participants in the state lower. They can be more attractive. It makes it more attractive to service providers to support. So they do find that coming together of the states and the partnership attractive. States don't have to undertake some of the RFP processes that they need for vendors, and it does support a more rapid launch of the program. So other things to think about versus a standalone program, partnering versus a standalone program. Again, you have to consider your comfort level with levels of decision-making and agreements and the degree of control about program management and features. So it may take a little bit more time to make desired changes if you're part of that partnership and have to work through those things, but it depends. And the failure of the state to fully understand termination provisions or revenue sharing expectations. And Hunter can speak to that more as they are considering that in the context of the Colorado partnership. So what remains the same regardless of whether you stand up the program on your own or you enter a partnership? I think sometimes there's a little bit of thinking that maybe entering a partnership takes a lot off of the state. But again, I think it's important to remember that states will have to continue to invest funds in governance and oversight. You will need staff. You will need marketing and outreach dollars, and you will need staff for marketing and outreach. Data, as I mentioned, employer data is incredibly important. Reporting, auditing, enforcement, all of these things are still roles and responsibilities of a state, regardless of whether you stand the program up on your own or you enter a partnership. So some of the first steps for programs that have gone through this process before you, thinking about whether we stand it up alone or we enter a state partnership. For many of the newest programs, one of the first steps they took was to issue a request for information to solicit partnership proposals. So they put together some questions that were important to them or priority for them, and then circulated that among some of the states to get feedback from those states. So whether it's Colorado or Connecticut, which are the two that right now have existing partnerships, or if you thought maybe we could partner with another state and we'd kind of be interested in what they might have to say. Bottom line is states reach out to the other states to solicit information about potential partnering. And again, Alani has access to many of these RFIs that have been issued by other states to gather this kind of information to help facilitate the boards making their decisions. An important thing as you think about your program and the important objective of helping more workers have access to a way to save for retirement is that in tackling this challenge, it is as we had hoped, and as I had always hoped and believed, it would be a combination of both public and private sector efforts. And what we're now seeing with research and data at Georgetown and done elsewhere is that in fact, state programs, as through their design, and availability have helped drive forward employer-sponsored plans, as I mentioned, with federal reforms and adopting things like auto enrollment, auto escalation, and some of these other features, and also new options to offer to small businesses. In the same way, state programs have also had a very positive impact in driving overall new plan formation. All of those tools that have been passed in federal reforms now manifesting itself in more employers adopting plans of their own. That's a great thing because the policy goal is closing the access gap. It's getting more employers and more workers into our system. And the state program is helping to drive that forward. So the state program is helping to fill that gap, but then it's also very positive because what we're seeing in these early adopter states has been positive progress in new plan formation as well. And so some initial analysis we did and released earlier this year at Georgetown with the early adopter states of California, Illinois, and Oregon shows that when we look at folks that are now covered, it's a very, very conservative estimate of how many more workers have been gaining access both through the state program and then also through a new induced plan formation. We have a long way to go. There's no question about that. This is going to take time, but we are starting for the first time in decades, I believe, to move the needle. There was also data that I just saw recently released from the Department of Labor, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in fact, confirming that we are seeing progress in starting to see more employers and more workers covered by employer-sponsored plans. And states, in my unbiased opinion, it is a biased opinion, states have played a really, really important role in the progress that we're seeing to date. So what lies ahead as we look forward to where we are, which is exciting, where we are today, and what the future holds? New states and hopefully bringing in more state programs and the growth of, I think we will continue to see the growth of partnerships. We will see states continue to look at employer compliance and be very thoughtful about the data needs to identify employers, but identify and to work with employers, because I think states have been very, very careful and thoughtful. The objective has not been to simply find employers and find employers. In fact, it's been to do everything possible to avoid that and to simply bring employers into the system and helping their workers save. There are efforts, again, to continue to think about how we can expand the pool of workers and savers, things that can be done to make it easier to reach these gig, non-traditional workers, things like auto re-enrollment if workers have opted out of the program, and how to bring them potentially back into the program. Know your customer is a topic which, again, we can get into more detail if necessary, but maybe a future discussion as you implement your program. But a lot of progress has been made in setting up these IRA accounts for savers. There have been challenges with respect to data and information that's required in order to open these accounts. Program administrators working with the states, the censuses and the VESWELs have made significant progress to help streamline this and find new ways to get the information necessary to help savers, to identify the savers, confirm those savers, and allow those accounts to be open. So it's an issue, but progress is being made to help do that. And by doing so, again, we've seen growth in the number of funded accounts. The Savers Match, again, state programs are going to be an excellent way to reach the eligible population for that Savers Match. And so that's something that, again, states are working together and talking about ways to be able to highlight and communicate and work with savers to take advantage, help them take advantage of that. And in the future, what we're looking at with this Congress, we've got the secure match, the Savers Match, as I mentioned. This is the implementation of these 2 rounds of federal reforms, the use of new expanded tax incentives and plan designs that have been available, and again, how to continue to make it easier for employers to adopt plans. So that's all ongoing in the broader retirement system, employer-sponsored plan space. And then there'll be some consideration of legislative proposals, another round, perhaps of federal reforms, although I think they will be very modest and just technical changes to what's already been done. I think there's a sense that there's a lot that's been accomplished, and we now need to allow the system to absorb these new plan designs and tax incentives, and see how we continue to make progress with the adoption of new employer-sponsored plans. There is always discussion and consideration of whether at some point there might be a national universal access requirement adopted. That continues to come up from time to time. I don't know if it's something that we'll see in the very near future, but again, I keep states posted monthly on what I see and hear, and will continue to do so as we go forward. But Hawaii is well positioned because most of the consideration of anything related to national universal access would be a pathway that puts that requirement in place, but states and the private sector together, as they're doing now at the state level, would be the options available, continue to be the options available to employers to achieve broader national access. So with that, I'll stop and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Barbara?
Yeah, Angela, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. I just have two questions, please. One is, you mentioned in terms of what's become the sort of standardized design of programs, that the standard now is not just having a Roth IRA option, but also the IRA, that, you know, the true IRA, the tax. At what point does that other option come in? Are states putting both options in at the inception of the program, or have they been starting with Roth IRAs and then expanding as the program matures?
And Hunter can certainly correct me if I'm wrong and jump in, but the programs generally have set it up with the Roth IRA as the primary savings vehicle. But usually statutorily or otherwise, from a regulatory perspective, you kind of keep in your back pocket the ability to also offer a traditional IRA if you want to do that and offer that as an option.
And then the other question is, can you explain more about the Savers Match and what binding impact it would have on an auto IRA program, or is that limited to other types of programs that we could just voluntarily adopt?
So, I mean, the Savers Match is going to be available to savers, right, throughout the entire, it doesn't matter whether you're in a state program or employer-sponsored plan. If you qualify based on income for that match, you're eligible to receive it. You know, one of the challenges that we have to work through administratively is that right now, that Savers Match cannot flow back into a Roth IRA. And so part of this discussion around Roth versus traditional is, you know, having that traditional option sort of authorized. Hopefully it will not be needed to receive the match, but states could potentially have that flexibility. But bottom line is, the state programs, because of who you're serving, states have seen themselves as being very well positioned to communicate about the availability of the match and to make sure that savers in the program are taking advantage of it if they're eligible, that they realize that they can claim it and get that match. And Hunter, I feel like if you wanted to add to that and how you're thinking about the match.
Sure. So I think just to clarify on the Savers Match, as Angela mentioned, so absent the ability to move into a Roth IRA, that kind of leaves it. That's kind of in part where we're in Colorado, we have the option of recharacterizing funds into a traditional, or having, if the saver wanted to open the separate traditional, they could do that as well, but that would require some action on their end. With the Savers Match, and I think from the state perspective, and I know other states may have a different take on it, it just strikes me as exceedingly complex absent the Roth treatment of the funds, of kind of creating a mismatch of where there's a sort of a convoluted administrative process to receive the funds if you are saving for retirement on the first question, and then the vehicle that you get to save them with. So not to go down a rabbit hole on this, I think really what we're looking at right now is hoping that there's been good positive feedback, I think, from folks in Congress and a lot of the stakeholders about this. There wasn't anything behind this other than it was just kind of an oversight to make some budget numbers work at some point. So if there's an option to change it, change the treatment to a Roth IRA, folks seem willing to do that. So to give you the short answer of this, it's a complicated solution if we have to deal with it as is. So I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed that we can streamline and just get good policy and solve it that way.
Yeah, so to Hunter's point, again, our hope, and I have conversations with folks here in Washington all the time, that Congress will fix this issue around being able to put the match into not being able to put the match into a Roth. So that's the easiest fix, and that's what we're going to see. So more to be done, but again, to the broader issue of just the match, the state programs are just, again, because of that population that you reach, who are more likely to be eligible. It's just the states kind of see this, the existing state programs and the conversations, they want to be able to share information about it and help people take advantage of it.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the boards?
I have a question. Sorry, there's no hand raising, so that's why I'm just jumping in. I have one question, which is, are the state expense categories that you listed, governance and oversight, marketing and outreach, are those, and particularly governance, or I'm sorry, marketing and outreach, do the states that have implemented, are their marketing and outreach budgets public? Are they available so that it helps us benchmark how much, we need to go to ask the legislature for?
Yeah. The transparency varies publicly from state to state, not a surprise. But that's why Georgetown, we help you with that. So not an unfamiliar question that I fielded from the states. I've even very recently from another state was about that marketing and outreach budget. I mean, and Hunter can share potentially what, they do in Colorado, but as a general rule of thumb, states have to, in terms of what I'm seeing for budgeting, again, it depends a little bit on size, but I'd say very conservatively, a couple $100,000 kind of in the line item budget. For bigger states, maybe about $400,000. But, there has to be a little bit of money set aside. And usually there's also staff that states have hired who are really dedicated to marketing and outreach, to that education and outreach throughout the state. So it is it's often outside of staff, it's probably the largest line item in the program budget.
Thank you.
Any other board members have any questions? Okay. We will move on to our next agenda then, which is the presentation by the Colorado Secure Savings Program. Hunter Raley. I hope I have that right. Executive Director, Colorado Secure Savings Board will present the Hawaii Retirement Savings Board with information, including but not limited to the background of the partnership of a dignified retirement, governance overview, and state partnership timeline. Go ahead, Hunter.
Sure. Thank you for having me. And again, my name is Hunter Raley. I'm the Executive Director of the Colorado Secure Savings Program and the chairman, I guess is the best way to put it, for the Partnership for a Dignified Retirement. And let me pull up my slides here. I know that it shows up, but if I switch, can folks see me switching the slides as well too? I had some issues. Okay. So just to provide, the Colorado Secure Savings Program is the auto IRA program for the state of Colorado. The Partnership for a Dignified Retirement is the consortium that we oversee and that we facilitate. So just very quickly, I was going to provide some background on both the Colorado program and how the Partnership for a Dignified Retirement came to be. An overview of the governance structure and how we've organized this, and the areas of collaboration and the areas where generally to Angela's earlier slides where we've kind of driven some standardization to reach economies of scale. And then uh, just a quick overview of the state partner implementation timeline, just to give you a sense of how quickly this could work. And I'll say at the front too, part of the to Angela's earlier point of the quicker launch, that's sort of where I think this background is a little bit helpful. So first and foremost, the Colorado Secure Savings Program was signed into law in the 2020 legislative session. So Colorado had like most states, had a COVID session that was split up a little bit. We didn't begin implementation until I was hired in early 2021. So during 2021, I was largely spent time procuring consultants, adding staff members. But I also had the opportunity to connect with the state of New Mexico, who, as Angela noted, currently has voluntary marketplace and auto IRA programs. And really where that conversation evolved was discussing what a potential partnership might look like. So for a bit of reference, for those who may not be aware, ABLE programs tend to kind of cluster around this consortium model. In part, that's to get viable vendor contracts in place. Also to kind of manage costs and fees for participants. So we really use that as sort of the jumping off point or the starting point, understanding that economies of scale and more participants were going to be the way to drive down account fees, and also really to keep vendors engaged, especially in the early stages. So in November of 2021, Colorado and New Mexico formalized what that partnership or negotiation was going to look like. So it really just detailed the areas of where we saw potential overlap being. And over about the next year or so, a little less than a year, I guess 10 months or so, we formalized this partnership structure, which really was in part kind of sits in three kind of core buckets for participating states. So the first is a master services agreement, which Colorado holds with its contractor Vestwell, an interstate adherence agreement, which is sort of the state oversight and governance document. And then for partner states, we ask that they sign what's called a partner addendum, which is so state as Hawaii will have its own standard template contracts in terms that it will need to see in a contract. You will negotiate those directly with Vestwell and kind of sign on and latch on to that master services agreement. Our first partner was the state of Maine, which we formally added in August of 2023. We have since added Delaware, Vermont, and Nevada. So Maine, Delaware, Vermont, and Nevada have also launched their programs as of this meeting. And we are in the final stages of finishing up our agreement with Minnesota, with the expectation that they're probably going to launch in January of 2026. So pivoting a little bit into the kind of the governance structure of the PDR. So our first priority was really to emphasize collaboration within this structure. So at a high level, our governance structure is a one state, one vote type model that really asks states to contribute. And that's for several reasons. The first, as I pointed out here, is identifying the limits of Colorado's authority as a lead state. So our fiduciary obligations can only be to Colorado savers under Colorado statute. And likewise, I don't think a state, if Hawaii were to partner with us, I don't think Hawaii would appreciate Colorado making decisions on behalf of Hawaii savers. So we really worked to design a governance structure where Colorado could set some guardrails and expectations and some standards within this structure, but really left the core governance and oversight roles to state partners. And in that vein, this PDR structure and and that's kind of where the professional staff component comes in, is overseen by an advisory committee. So this committee, to distinguish from a policymaking committee, this advisory committee cannot make formal policy decisions. So really what we can do is review data, examine best practices, understand market, and really rely on the expertise of professional staff. But what this committee is doing is voting to make recommendations to their own oversight bodies. So as a board, what you would hear is a recommendation coming from the director who would provide the rationale and the understanding of why the partnership is moving that direction, with the ask that the board either ask questions, make revisions, do its oversight due diligence, and then ultimately approve any changes to that structure. And that really leaves the fiduciary obligations within the states themselves. It also provides ample opportunity for state partners to provide formalized feedback and really brainstorm new ideas in different directions that we can take this, while maintaining a degree of stability that reassures both vendors and participants that there's not going to be, rapid decisions that are going to be made that are going to impact their savings or anything like that. As I noted, the vendor relationship is managed via a master services agreement. So Colorado went out for cooperative procurement with the understanding that other states would be able to latch on to this document. In that vein, most of the terms, I think most, if not all of the terms of this fit into some national consortium that kind of develops these contract templates. Where I'm going with this is Hawaii state statutes would largely, in contracting guidelines, would largely fit within this alignment. And then like the specifics where, there are some deviations, and that's typically like data privacy policies, insurance policies, and stuff like that. That's where you would address those in your partner addendum separately. This master services agreement establishes the service level agreements and what you would expect as a state from our vendor Vestwell. The interstate adherence agreement is where the state advisory committee and kind of the areas of discussion for this advisory committee exist. So that really just discusses like voting procedures, criteria for membership, some of those specifics that you would traditionally find in a contract. We decided to move those outside and put those in the interstate agreement. It also details procurement processes. So in a sense, if the partnership as a whole wanted to procure, let's say, like joint legal services or something like that, it details the process for how we would go about doing that. It also creates the obligations for Colorado as the lead state for if Hawaii were to have an issue, hypothetically, with our vendor Vestwell, of how we would go through dispute resolution and work to correct those issues. Moving on a little bit, and this falls outside any of the formal governance arrangements, but as Angela noted, Colorado's program really aligns with the best practices that we've observed. So it's a very simplified investment menu, very streamlined structure that relies on a Roth IRA as the default. And then we have 5 investment options. So a capital preservation fund, a target date suite, fixed income, domestic equity, and international equity. And our investment managers are State Street Global Advisors, who manage capital preservation, the target date suite, and the fixed income. And then BlackRock has the domestic equity and international equity asset classes. This is a fairly standard defined contribution lineup. There's good exposure across domestic and international equities, and also some safer options with fixed income and the capital preservation. And the way we manage this and provide, again, going back to that fiduciary obligation, is every partner state has their own investment policy statement. But because we are using off-the-shelf investment products that any consumer could purchase, they have well-established benchmarks that go into those investment policy statements. So in so many words, it's pretty unlikely and in most cases probably impossible for differing states to have differing views on whether these investments are performing to benchmark. It's a pretty straightforward look at whether these are doing what they're supposed to do. And what that really means from a governance standpoint is that when we're assessing these is the binary of, are they meeting the benchmarks? They are or they aren't. And then as a group, what we are discussing long-term in particular, because most of these savers are defaulting into the target date suite, is are these target date products adequately designed for the saver population that we have? So that's where we're looking at glide path of the distinctions between a to retirement age and through retirement age, and then monitoring innovations in the industry as both State Street and BlackRock and several others have worked to set up lifetime income options and kind of like some annuitized products that aren't legally allowable within Roth IRAs at the present moment, but that may benefit our savers and may lead to a broader policy discussion at a later date in the future. So that's sort of the long-winded explanation of the governance structure. And on this asterisk point of at this stage, Colorado, this partnership structure has demonstrated the ability to launch programs quickly and also engage in joint decision-making processes. So I'll touch on the decision-making processes first. So the partnership as a whole is currently finalizing or adding some clarity for termination language to our interstate agreement. That is, if a partner state were to leave. And we found that process to be relatively straightforward, all parties working fairly well together. But one of the the reason why I want to highlight that is the challenging thing with this beyond launching is now you have to work in a group and you have to ensure a uniform decision making across parties. And we've already had to do that. So we added the domestic equity asset class after Maine, Delaware, and Vermont had joined the partnership. So we already have a stream. It took a little bit longer than we thought we would, but that allowed us to understand how procurement and pursuing a new investment option would work in a group setting. And it also allowed us to identify the areas where we can streamline that moving forward. And I just wanted to call that out mainly in the sense that there's phases to your program of you want to design, implement, and launch, but once you've launched, there's the ongoing maintenance and providing oversight obligations. And if something needs to be tinkered with, this is an area where I've been very diligent to make sure that we can make decisions in a timely manner that wouldn't expose anybody to legal liability. So finalizing and just on that timeline option a little bit more just to add some color. So Colorado as a standalone program with secure savings, I think, and Angela, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we were one of the fastest states to launch a standalone program. And it took us from about February 2021 when I joined until January 2023. And that was me essentially speed running through procurement and hustling through that. So if there's any like kind of kinks or like disruptions in your procurement process as a standalone program, you're kind of looking at somewhere in the ballpark of 2 to 3 years to launch a program. With the partnership, what we have demonstrated is that by the time we have contracts and documentation in place, we can launch a program in as little as 3 months, provided we have the appropriate employer data from the participating states. We're averaging about 6 months from contracts signed to launch dates. And we've had good engagement. We haven't really seen any dips in participation or response rates or anything like that as a result of that. But just wanted to briefly highlight some of the timelines. And as we're seeing right here, we're finalizing details with Minnesota, but we are anticipating a January 2026 launch date with them. And as a final consideration too, our contract has price breaks or fee breaks for savers built into the contract as we hit core milestones as a consortium. So that's kind of where Colorado sees the benefit of facilitating this. We can reduce our fees and then hopefully collectively get to sustainability at a faster pace. And just as a final slide for if anybody has follow-up questions beyond this, that's my email and phone number. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll take these slides down and see if there are any questions.
Any questions?
So what happened to New Mexico?
So New Mexico's engagement with the partnership was contingent on moving from a voluntary program to a mandated program. And that was at the request of our vendors. Vendors don't want to, it's a public-private partnership. There are high upfront costs for private parties who engage with these programs by way of sending letters and communications out to employers. So in so many words, New Mexico was unable to transition from a voluntary to a mandatory program for savers. So that under those terms, we were unable to facilitate a partnership, mainly because New Mexico's own feasibility studies showed less than 1% adoption absent a mandate.
Farmer?
Yeah, again, two questions, please. Sorry. What is your mechanism for oversight of the investments? You talked about the fact that there are benchmarks. You know, obviously there's a regular review of how the investment options are meeting those benchmarks. Is there a governance structure for regular meetings where the contractors give updates on those?
So I meet with my board quarterly, and we have an investment consultant that for my board, and our partner states also have their own oversight entities. So I say that in the vague term. They all have boards, say for Vermont, who is a sole fiduciary, but they have an investment consultant as well. So they're doing regular reporting within that structure. Um, as the partnership grows, and we've added additional states, Minnesota in particular has shown a desire to set up an investment subcommittee of sorts within this structure. And our interstate agreement, the interstate adherence agreement allows for us to formally set up subcommittees and kind of do this review work as well.
And then this may be a little too granular, but you mentioned in terms of the state partner implementation timeline that these really impressively quick implementations are of course conditioned on the data being available. What data are you referring to there?
So and I say this in the general sense because these data points may live in different data sets, but in general, most state programs use state unemployment insurance data. So that'll be FEINs and email, phone, and physical address contact info for the employers. But that may come from a different source in Hawaii. I don't want to overspeak. I know, and Angela, correct me if I'm wrong. Most states go through a Department of Labor and Employment, but Illinois may go through its like tax revenue or Department of Revenue and things like that. Our vendor, Vestwall, has a really concise list of those data points that it can provide, but I can tell you that whether it's UI, we're also using paid family and medical leave data in Colorado. Those data points exist somewhere. And really what the purpose of that is your vendor is going to send a communication to all employers that fall, at least to the extent we can tell from the data under the statute, to notify them of their obligations.
Thank you.
And this may be a question more for Angela. Do you know why Connecticut and Rhode Island went off on their own? Off on their own, but it didn't. I mean, sounds like Colorado had this stuff together. And what was the reason that Connecticut and Rhode Island did their own thing?
I think it was probably a couple of things. Connecticut's design was a little bit different at the time, although I will say now they finally passed this year some program amendments to change the design so that they could increase their default contribution level. They were at 3%, they're going to be at 5%. They didn't have compliance. Now they do. So the train started moving down the track for Connecticut, given its structure as it was, to look for partner states. So there was a little bit of a difference in Connecticut with program design. I think the other thing was because of that Connecticut size. They're a little bit small. They're not as small as Hawaii, but being a smaller state, the importance of partnering, but also recognizing the differences in their program design. And then geographically, Connecticut's a really tiny state, so it was just easy I think the thinking was it's just, it's the neighbor next door and easy to work with them to partner. So the reality is now they did successfully. It took 3 tries, and I know Hawaii's familiar with that. Sometimes people assume this, you can make these changes right away, but sometimes it takes time, and it did with Connecticut, but that train started to move down the tracks, and the leadership in Hawaii, in Connecticut really wanted to look for partners to come together with them for scale and understanding their program design. And then geographically, the fact that the New England states, several of them have auto IRA programs in place. So I think those were some of the considerations, but I think some of it was, leadership was like, we'd like to have a partnership too, and we'd like to reach out to states as well. So I think that was just part of it. But the word, I think, differences in design considerations as well.
And important to mention is Connecticut launched ahead of Colorado. So the Connecticut was an existing, it wasn't kind of in the same way where Colorado had this and Connecticut just decided to start on its own. It was an existing program that decided at a later date that it wanted to add this component to its program.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just
Brian?
thank you. I guess I appreciate the fact that we get a earlier launch. It seems like we can get an earlier launch date. I guess I was thinking with the combination of states and the number of employees and the amounts of savings that would come about. I guess my concern, balancing that a quick launch, but what would be the timeline in terms of, say, lower fees or or I don't know, more options in terms of investment options or something. But is that something that well, that's something I think we got to consider. But that's what I look at also. And for that, is it worth also, I guess, because Hawaii's so small that in terms of numbers that how much of that is a factor in terms of partnership?
Yeah.
I mean, I can speak on the general side too. So Colorado, with our existing set of partners, both in terms of like the growth in Colorado and then the partner launches. So we're expected to, I am back of the napkin expecting us to hit our first fee break for Savers probably sometime in 2026. So that's going to be that would be a $2 per account reduction in fees. And then we'll continue growing on that because the next fee break, at least on the dollar side, would be an additional $2. I think to your point on the flexibility around investments, I think that's always the question that states ask. And that's where I think the point that Colorado is using as the starting point is we went with a very vanilla defined contribution lineup, understanding that the savers themselves tend to sit in the income range of about $40,000 a year up to maybe 65, so very low to moderate income individuals. Where we would be interested in the future is understanding that, and that's I think the big piece of the governance structure and having the ability to make decisions is I'm not under the impression that just because this is where we're starting, this is where we're going to finish. I think we collectively need to be attentive to what the needs are on the ground, and as we're learning more about this, evolving with it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would just, if I could add to what Hunter said, I think, there is a consideration for state at this point, if it wanted to go on its own versus partnering, that there are some initial sort of startup cost differentiations and considerations. So, the vendors would be looking for some additional resources being put in on the part of the state if they were asking the vendor to support standing up a standalone program. So that's another consideration that feeds into I think some of the things you need to just consider is if you were to put out an RFP for a program administrator for a standalone program, the responses that you would get back from the vendors in terms of what they would ask in terms of state resources invested upfront, because of the issue of scale, and Hawaii is so small, that would be a serious consideration for those vendors, depending on how much money Hawaii would be willing to put into the program. So that's also another consideration. I'd also say, just, for reference, we're in the process of updating it as we do on a regular basis. But at our website at cri.georgetown.edu, the state tab, we have state frequently asked questions, and one of them does track program fees. So you can see we have the state programs listed, and then we have the Colorado states grouped together. So there are some updates that we need to be making in the next few days to reflect where we are with some of the states that are coming down the pike and about to open. And then I think California, as an example, recently dropped a component piece of its fee by $1. So there are these changes, and as we see states scaling, to Hunter's point, we start to hit break points. We see that negotiation and the reduction in fees. So that's nice to be seeing as well, both with the Colorado program and California most recently.
Thank you.
And I probably should have included it because I think, Angela, your numbers are kind of a month off, but Colorado finally cleared 90,000 funded accounts, and we're starting an annual wave. But as a consortium right now, we're at about 120,000 funded accounts and a little over 190 million across all the partner states we have here. And I say that with the asterisk of Nevada is not reporting to us yet, so I would imagine we're closer to 130,000 funded accounts and probably closer to 200 million. And then Colorado has a fairly substantial amount of growth that we're expecting over the next 6 to 8 months, mainly because we have improved our data set. And we're going to start enforcement next year.
Rep Sayama, do you have your hand up?
I think that's just.
No, okay. Andrew, did you have a question or?
Yeah, but, other than Colorado, is Connecticut open to adding new partners, or any other states open? Maybe that's Angela.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would think Connecticut would be still interested, but, again, I think that's, the process that I described, if Hawaii wanted to go in that direction. Again, traditional sort of to date, how states have approached it is putting together sort of questions, top of your mind, considerations for a partner state, and reaching out to other states to have them respond and engage in a discussion with them. It's not inconceivable that, well, let me put it this way. When the RFIs have gone out, Colorado, Connecticut have been among the responders, but not the only responders. But to date, we have what we have, but other states have responded. So that can shift, that may shift again. So if Hawaii puts something out, you may see Connecticut, Colorado responding, but you may have one or two other states that also respond as well.
Okay, thank you.
So just for the board members' information, at our next board meeting, October 21st, all of these things will be properly agendized items. So the board needs to make decisions on whether it's going to go standalone or enter into an interstate consortium. Delegations regarding RFIs and RFPs, all of those things will be discussed and decided upon next month.
Keola, did you have a question?
Yes, first an observation that I just looked up the populations of the different states. And it's interesting that Maine, Delaware, and Vermont are all with Connecticut, and they have smaller populations than the state of Hawaii. So I just wanted to make that observation based on the 2020 and 2020 census and 2024 estimate. My question is regarding the revenue sharing that was mentioned, that Angela mentioned. What is that? And is there any revenue sharing in the Colorado partnership?
You go.
Sure. So right now, our consortium has a 5 basis point asset-based fee that applies to all states. So Hawaii would get 5 basis points of its investments. And then we have flexibility on the dollar-based fees. So I believe Maine, Vermont, and Delaware are collecting an additional $4 per account that they capture for their own revenue. So that's where I think that's the thing that we have worked out fairly well with Colorado with our partnership is that we've allowed some degree of some states need to get revenue coming in sooner, whereas Colorado has to work around a statutory fee cap that kind of precludes us from going after revenue sooner rather than later. And we've kind of found the right balance with how to conduct that within our within this structure. But the short answer too is unless we were doing something by way of like joint procurement, there Hawaii doesn't pay Colorado. There's no financial obligations mutually amongst the states.
Thank you.
Good question.
So, do the board have any other observations or questions at this time? Okay.
Ryan?
Oh, no.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We will then go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is the executive director's report, and she will provide us an update on the Hawaii Retirement Savings Program and budget, as well as an update on personnel. Do I have anybody from the public who would wish to provide testimony at this time? Okay. And do I have any comments from the board at this time? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to the executive director.
Okay, so before I go into my update, I'd just like to thank Angela and Hunter again for your willingness to present information, very detailed information, which will help the board make informed decisions next month and the coming months. So thank you very much, especially given the time difference. So thank you. Thank you so much. Did you guys know further questions? Okay. So just an update on the board or the program's budget. We have a total of $900,541 remaining in the appropriation for fiscal year 25 through 26. You have $720,000, $75,000 will go to consulting contracts, $500,000 to marketing and communications, and $145,000 which will go to legal, audit, and insurance. For fiscal year 26 through 27, you have $445,000 total, $50,000 is assigned to consulting contracts, $250,000 for marketing and communications, and the remainder legal, audit, and insurance. Okay. Any questions? No? All right. So an update on personnel. Thank you to Andrew and Barbara. They were panelists for the program specialist interview panel. We interviewed a total of 4 individuals and we are deciding on 2 particular people. So hopefully we will have someone hired no later than the end of December, or we begin the process again. Okay, and that is that. Thank you so much again.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, our next agenda item is our next meeting, which is currently scheduled for October the 21st, 2025, which will be a virtual video conference Zoom meeting, as well as in person here in room 321 at 830 Punch Bowl Street in Honolulu, Hawaii. And once again, thank you, everybody.
Sorry,
Yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
concerning the next meeting. So Alana, I know you mentioned that there's some decision points that you're teeing up for us at the next meeting.
Yes.
I'm just not clear on what is needed and what we do now versus later on data collection. Is that something, you know, maybe we can discuss that at the next meeting? Is that something that can be done internally that requires a consultant? And if so, what authorizations are needed from the board in order to proceed with that? Same thing on marketing and outreach. And interestingly, one of the points that I hadn't realized until the presentations today, it looks like we're gonna have to at some point tee up an RFP or looking for an investment advisor. I'm trying to get a feel for what services, if we went with an existing partnership, would not be within the partnership, and what we as a board and then, you know, you as the program need to move forward on those.
So if you would allow me to have additional conversations, maybe with Hunter and Connecticut as well as Angela, I could get all of that information for you and present it to you at the October board meeting.
I have one question for you. What data are you asking about?
Uh,
Are you asking about the employer data?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yes, so there should be further discussion about that, because I think we discussed that earlier.
But
some
in
of
general,
our-
and I'm not sure what,
Yeah.
again, what's needed to actually move ahead on that and what,
Yeah.
So if
tee
I
that up.
recall correctly, Hunter mentioned that in the Vestwell contract, there are specific data points that do need to be collected. So I'll take a look at that particular contract. And then that would require further an MOU or an MOA with the Unemployment Insurance
Right.
Division.
Okay, terrific. Then that should be a helpful discussion next time. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you, everybody. We'll go ahead and adjourn at 11:23 a.m.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Take care.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.